Greetings, I am Panjami Anand and I work as the Soul Plan Reader. It gives me great pleasure to interact with you and I thank you all very much for your likes and comments on our previous video. It has been truly encouraging. I would like to express my gratitude towards Rivers and Afan for propelling me to speak to a wider public and take inner awareness out into the world. The second wave of the COVID has hit us hard, and we are back to being confined to our homes. It can be very frustrating to refrain from life as we know it and the things we are used to doing. It is normal to be angry and irritated, so the topic I choose to speak on today is relevant with the times. I would like to create as much as awareness as possible about how to be kinder and empathic to our fellow beings, especially people who live with us. This little talk is a humble attempt to create mindfulness in our daily interaction with the people we love. So, before we begin, let us pray to the healing angels to take all our worries away. Thank you. Today, we're going to explore the power of speech. Instead of making it sound like a long, preachy sermon, I intend to first speak on the shadow and shadow projection and put a little focus on the emotion called anger. I will then move on to the power of words in order to put much focus on what determines the quality of our moods and the words that roll out of our mouths. To explain the power of words, I intend to use a brief explanation of numerology numbers 1 to 9 so that we can get a terse but sharp idea on how to be sensitive with people born under those numbers. The purpose of this neurological explanation is also to be aware that how words can hurt and destroy people from attaining their true potential. I also hope to throw light on how a brilliant number is going to be a shadow under its pertaining numbers. So I'm going to start with shadow self and shadow projection. The shadow self is a concept propagated by Carl Jung, Swiss psychologist, around 100 years ago, and it is still one of the most effective ways to explain complex human emotions. A deep ideology, it helps us to cope and understand difficult relationship dynamics. All of us have a shadow. So when I speak of shadow in this context, it does not mean a literal shadow. In the psychological sense, a shadow is something like an alter ego. All the things that you do not like um, about yourself, all of your sorrow, your unmet needs, your shame, and memories that you do not like to open up to and have difficulty in sharing or even remembering is part of our shadow. All the things we have long wanted to do, but we have been made guilty of wanting to do so, all our indulgences that we have refrained from, everything that we have been conditioned through our upbringing to stay away from is part of our shadow. All the things that we hold back from doing has a place in our shadow. So no matter what we do, what we read, how many pilgrimages we take, um, the retreats we become part of, um, some things in our heart and soul cannot be changed. Some things will always make us angry, sad, or jealous, or outrightly pissed off. Now, why? Let us explore a little bit of our shadow self for an understanding of what our shadow is going to be. Okay. This could be a revelation, but I beseech you to take matters discussed here as an instance of positive transformation. It is not meant to hurt or curb or incite negative emotions. In my last talk, I mentioned about soul plan and diving deep into ourselves because we all have that magic, all the tools required to transform ourselves into a soul dimension simply through knowing yourself. Now, Mark Manson, in his book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Beat, mentions that being open with your insecurities paradoxically makes you confident and charismatic around others. The pain of honest confrontation is what generates the greatest trust and respect in your relationships. Now, suffering through your fears and anxiety is what allows you to build courage and perseverance. So, this is the same reason why we're going to explore the shadow self today. To enable self reflection, the concept of shadow self is best explored through examples. I'm going to begin with an example from my own life, from my marriage. Now, my husband is an army son. Daddy was an AME in the army. My husband lost his father when he was around 11 years old. Now, having such a deep void and shock of strong things happening suddenly and sharply, my husband is not comfortable with uncertainty and chaos in his life. He likes to be in control of situations. He has discipline and originality in his genes. Now, if he takes on a responsibility, he likes to fulfill it to the T. If he can't, it makes him restless and anxious. Whereas me, I am my father's only daughter. I have two male siblings, and my father himself is someone far outside the conventional box. Now, I am calm and quiet. Maybe my line of work has transformed me, but how my husband and I deal with things, we are very different in that regard. Now, suppose we are to be at our relative's home for lunch at around 1 p.m. My husband is held back at work since he's working from home. The time is already 1:30. Here I am all dressed up. I was ready by 12:45 p.m., knowing how finicky my husband is about being punctual. Now, seeing my husband neck deep in work, there is no point in me pressing him or making him uncomfortable. So I leave my shoes and handbag ready to walk out of the house when we can, and I sit on my couch catching up with my favorite web series. Now the time is 1:45 p.m. and my husband is finally free from meetings. Now he's angry at himself because people will wait for us to have lunch together. So on his way to have a shower, he sees me all relaxed and chilled. He flares up, he says things like, "How can you relax? We need to go." So in my own relaxed manner, I'll tell him, "Now I'm all ready. We'll go when you are." So my calmness will drive him nuts. Now, why is that? I'm not even doing anything. I'm not saying anything to piss him off. Now he gets angry because his shadow self is triggered. He is not able to control the time he needs to spend at work. Now he is a proactive guy who likes to ascertain things going out of hand before it happens. And in the middle of all that, there I sit relaxed. It ticks him off because I am composed during chaos and he's not. Now, when he sees me at that moment, he sees someone who has the audacity to be calm when his feathers are ruffled and mine are not. Now his shadow is triggered and he starts projecting it by saying, "How can you be so detached in a situation that requires you to be proactive? You're too calm and too indifferent." Now, saying all this, he will go into the shower and the rest will follow once he's out. Now, me on the other hand, if my shadows are under control, I won't budge. I'm empathetic. I know that he's married himself. He's just projecting a bad mood, but none of this is my fault. Now, I am ready. Okay, I just need to go. He got delayed, but I'm not even saying you delayed me. It's because of you we are late. I just let the moment pass. But if his words trigger my shadow and I project them, I will throw my empathy away. And why? Because not only was being late the least of my fault, but the judgment of being told that I am indifferent and detached. Now, those words will trigger me because deep down inside me, I know that I can be detached and indifferent when I'm not comfortable or I have nothing to do. Now, my own judgment about myself coming from another triggers me. So, through this personal example, we've explored one of the examples of shadow projection, which is judgment and self-judgment. Now we now suppose you were raised in a kind and loving home, and you're very helpful, and you're well brought up in every sense. Now, over the years, if you have lived complying to others because you have been taught to be nice and kind and gentle and helpful, eventually you grow up to be a people pleaser. Now, it is lovely to have warm, pleasing people around us. Often, people pleasers have great trouble in asking for help and saying no. Now, suppose you need a little help with something. Say you're reorganizing or doing some errand for the company. You ask for help from one of your contacts passing by, or maybe one of your siblings or your husband. So, and outrightly they say, "No, I'm in a hurry, I have somewhere else to be." Now, it ticks you off because you who never say no to anyone find it very unfair when you are not indulged in the same way. You bottle these emotions inside, and one fine day you just burst, tired of keeping everything inside. Now, what is triggered here is sorrow resulting in anger because your unmet needs have surfaced. You want to be loved and crooned to just as how you were taught or conditioned to treat others. others. So when you see someone who has the power to say no, something you have not worked on, and you're not conditioned to do so, it takes your shadow of making you angry, melancholic, giving you, a bad mood. So similarly, now suppose you are the girl who keeps to yourself. Something has happened in your immediate community, and you see another woman assert herself. Now, this assertive woman has so much clarity, and there is nothing wrong or culpable about her. In fact, her words are helpful and effective. So, instead of taking the positive side of her words and action, the girl that keeps to herself is sticks. Now, what she might say things like, what does she think of herself? Who does she think is? I am not like that. I'm responsible enough. I maintain decorum in the room. I do not raise my voice. So you see, there is so much juxtaposition with an inner thought running because the shadow self of unmet needs and a voice that she would have loved to assert, but she does not. It's triggered. Now, if you find yourself outwardly criticizing someone, but inwardly you are envious of what they are, you have a shadow with unmet needs. Now, suppose you have a contact um, who is also invited to a party with you are. Now, this gorgeous person is dressed to kill and is being a strong attraction in the room. People are laughing to his or her jokes, and you feel, what an arrogant, what a vain person. How dare she express herself or himself this way? Whereas the other person is doing nothing wrong, but the sight of the person is triggering your shadow self of your unmet arrogance. Now you are arrogant yourself. You know, you feel when you are rocking it, you just know. Now, when you see someone doing the same, you find them arrogant too. So, what you're doing is projecting your own shadow onto them, and you feel you are justified in being rude and dragging them down with one liners and feelers. So, when you drag people down, you're giving your power away. When you project your shadow with anger onto another person, you are giving your power away. You have no right to be rude simply because your shadows are triggered. Now, a shadow is a coping mechanism we form to cope with the rebukes, the chiding, the ignominy we go through when we are vulnerable children. So, as we grow up, we tend to hold on to these shadows, but as we grow up, we are required to be nice and kind and gentle and thoughtful and helpful, and also with sound boundaries to help ourselves. We need to say no at the right time. It's all very healthy to do. But as we transition into adulthood, it is not healthy to have shadows that do not let you grow and evolve into better people. So, whenever we have a shadow trigger, what we need to do is take a moment off and not let that emotion that is so powerful become you. You need to be able to separate you from the emotional trigger. Now, this brings us to the second leg of our discussion, namely anger. Now, anger is an emotion one which makes one feel helpless. The moment you get angry, you cannot see yourself. Now, cowards unleash anger on those people they can express it to and get away with it. Our little children are the ones who see our worst because they are usually powerless and they do not react to stop you. They don't know how. So now, if we are going to walk around with loads of anger and fear and an outright defensive demeanor, we are actually projecting our shadows. We are afraid to see anything in ourselves, so we project it by getting very aggressive towards people we can. Now, bullies are those who have been bullied a lot. Critical folks are those who who criticize every chance they get. They have been criticized greatly. So they become the critical parent, as they say in transformational analysis. So all we need to do is diffuse this projection and see them with compassion. We could start thinking, whoever gave them that shadow, why are they like that, so we can be more compassionate instead of judging them. Now, if we are really pissed or irritated or saddened by someone around us, if we take someone's personality a little too closely or in a personal sense, there is something about them that is pointing to something inside us, and it is something that we need to own up to. Now, if we find ourselves disproving and yet being very jealous of someone's way of being or behavior, we need to identify an unmet need inside us that this person is triggering, we need to do it in a very healthy way. We need to be compassionate to ourselves. Now, this is why we need to bring in empathy. Now, empathy is the ability to step into the shoes of another person, aiming to understand their feelings and perspectives, and to use that understanding to guide our actions. But let me tell you, this is the most difficult thing. No matter what you do, there will be that particular someone who simply gets your goal. You can't control your feelings or your anger. Now, since 2010s, there is a wave of spiritual awareness happening. A lot of people are attending courses and they're learning different healing modalities. Um, they read on a lot of spiritual guides, spiritual gurus. But maybe for a few days it helps, all that new knowledge helps. But after that, all it takes is one small trigger, and people find it impossible to imbibe those lessons into their deeper being. So people say spirituality doesn't work, change doesn't really happen. A lot of it is just pure superficiality. And one of the major emotions that let us down is anger. So anger has its own plus points. Okay? It is known to be a blessing. It is an emotion essential for our growth. Without anger, we would never know our likes and the things we disdain. Anger helps us to evolve or fine tune ourselves. It helps us to decipher our boundaries. Our ancestors survived wild animal attacks because of anger in prehistoric times, but the rapid anger attacks damage our modern minds today. So, anger can destroy. The longer you hold on to it, it can swallow your relationships and the joy in your lives. Why is anger such a powerful emotion? The basic reason why we are endowed with an emotion like anger is to protect ourselves. It arises from a portion of our brain called the amygdala, which triggers automatic response to threat commonly known as fight, flight, or freeze. When trying to fathom a threat, the amygdala activates the hypothalamus, which in turn tells our pituitary gland to release hormones like the stress chemical cortisol, adrenaline rush, norepinephrine. Before we even know it, our body is filled with hormones and neurotransmitters that shoot up our heart rate, our muscles become powerful, and they increase our blood pressure, all to get us ready to fight. Before we know it, our prefrontal cortex that controls reasoning takes a backseat and make us impulsive decision makers and make us say harsh words that which we don't even remember after a fight. So too much anger compromises our brain, increases our blood pressure, compromises immune system, creates heart disease and worse. Eventually, our amygdala will have a difficulty separating slights or things that do not matter with imaginary threats. So, our shadow is a dark cloud of unmet needs. It triggers itself, and when you overthink to yourself, when you convince yourself that someone you know or you used to be friends with, now if you're convinced that they don't like you. Now you are convinced that they don't like you. The idea that someone does not like you can bother one so much. So now if you go and confront them, asking, why is it that you don't speak to me or why don't you like me? And often the reply would be, I don't have an issue and why would I even dislike you? So there is a chance that that person may not be even thinking or even considering of thinking of you. So it's all in you. It's just your shadow self triggering it. A scenario like this means you are projecting your own judgment. Your own personal stuff is clogging the shadow self and its unmet needs, and you accuse the other of judging you when you're in reality judging yourself. Now, how can one curtail this emotion called anger? Please note, none of us, our emotions are ever going away, but one of the biggest blessings of being human is that we are blessed with emotional intelligence. We can make a choice. So before you choose to get angry and give your power away, take a moment to step back instead of letting the emotion overpower you. You may have a second or two or three to detach the anger from your being and think what kind of response does this warrant before you give your power away. You have a couple of seconds to think before you react. This effort, now it takes a lot of effort, but the effort is worth it. And The effort it takes depends from person to person. It requires a lot of consciousness, but um, well, you need to know what is happening within you, what is happening outside you. It takes a lot of understanding and mindfulness to decipher, is this really happening? Now, is this like imagined? Does this warrant my reaction, or am I required to protect myself? You have a couple of seconds to make this assessment before you get into the flow of involuntary reactive emotions. Now, meditation is a beautiful way to befriend one's shadow. Once we start embracing the aspects in the dark cloud called our shadow, we will be able to handle all of these strong emotions beautifully. Research shows that meditation can shrink the amygdala and help to prevent in suppressing the anger that builds up. But mindfully, you can observe your feelings and try reframing them. Sorry. Now, imagine you are stuck in traffic and you're losing your temper, and someone just outrightly overtakes you, and you worked up. Just imagine the person that just cut you off has had a bad day, or he's in a hurry, he or she needs to get home, there's something happening at work. Now you can change your anger into compassion. Our imagination can trigger the amygdala, or it can quieten it. So try creating stories that reframe an offender's action, and make yourself believe that there is no threat when there is none. So don't forget meditation. As meditation is by far one of the best ways to curtail and reduce all these recurring negative emotions and events. So changing how we deal with anger, it changes our brain. It freezes it, from triggering all these automatic responses, and helps us to enjoy good health and fulfillment. It helps us thrive. So with all this, we come to the third and perhaps the last main section of our discussion, the power of words. I hope by now we all have a rough idea on a whole lot of things that have a profound effect on the words that roll out of our mouths. So, by choice of our words, we can actually make and break important relationships and things in our lives. Uh, in our primary relationships, say the relationship we have with our parent, say our mother, the words that have come to us from that quarter have a very deep influence. I bet there are so many people who carry much resentment for the kind of things that have been said to us. The words that come from a person that we look up to, it becomes us eventually. Suppose a parent says, "You have a shapeless body." It could be a random statement. That's it, but it sticks to you for a long time, and eventually we attract shapelessness. We literally attract shapelessness. So most of us have issues with our body type simply because of these random, thoughtless comments. Even stupid ones have been told to us. Now, words carry so much power that they can influence us over lifetimes. So before we say something harsh and toxic and belittling to someone, think about it. Taste your words before you let them roll out of your system. There is a Buddhist saying that say something only when it is better than your silence. So if you are now suppose you are an avid movie watcher, all the film dialogues today have the F word every other minute. Where is the imagination and grace? Art represents the ideology and sentiment of a generation. Now consider, what are we going to leave our children with? We are going to leave them with a great deal of unresolved anger. So it has become so random, to greet someone saying, "Hey bitch," and then the person will be replied to with, "I'm fine, you retard." So there is so much, there's no, I mean, how do I put it? There is a lack of mindfulness or consciousness. Somehow it leads to an understanding that humanity has lost its strength to pull itself back into vitality. There is no resilience when it comes to wanting to say good things, and even to stay as a lovely human being. Though it's like people have resigned to thinking that the world expects me to be rude, insensitive, poker faced, rough, and angry in my temperament, and I'm going to resign myself to be exactly that. There are people who say that All this foul language is to be taken in good humor, but every word we utter has a vibrational frequency. Words that make us feel bad or take our power away from us should be used with great care. So imagine the power of a curse. Now, curses are a matter that we'll discuss some other time. So be very careful when you let out words in anger. Now, what you are and what you are not is your business. So, when we are children, we derive our self worth from people around us. The moment you accept that, or you start feeling that you do not feel comfortable in the presence of certain people, the words they say are affecting you in a negative way, you owe it to yourself to detach yourself from that relationship or that situation. Now, again, I do not wish to sound all preachy, so to pep things up and to bestow an idea of how things will affect us, I'm going to explain numbers 1 to 9 and the effect of shadow projection and anger on them. So that way we can cover the numerous ways of how harsh words can give us shadows and affect our individuality. So, how do we know your primary number? Okay, your date. So, for example, now I am born on December 7th. So, 7 is a number of primary importance for me. So, the total of my date of birth, okay, now if I add my date of birth, 7/12/1982, it gives me a 3. So, now 3 is also an important number for me. So, all the factors that pertain to a 7 and all the factors that pertain to a 3, both of them influence me. So, for now, I think this little information would do. Okay, so I'm going to start with the number one. The number one, now if you are born on the 1st, 10th, 19th, 28th of a month, you are a number one. Okay. Now, a number one is the beginner, the person with a great deal of clarity of thoughts and action. The number one has a great sense of initiative. The number one is a leader, an original thinker. So, no matter where a number one is born, they will work themselves out of adversities, become successful, and rise above people around them. Now, whereas a child or a young adult who has not been given the love or the nurturing that would catapult it into its full potential will be unable to be a leader that it should be. Now, it will not be able to stand its own ground and take initiative. It will live on borrowed ideas with a lot of talent bubbling in its shadow. So, when you talk to a child with one as a strong number, keep things terse and crisp to the point. Keep things to the point and say what you mean and let that clarity of thought become the voice in its head. So now let's move on to number two. If you have been born on 2nd, okay, on 11th, on 20th and 29th, you are a number two. So it is perhaps one of the most sensitive, compassionate, tactful, diplomatic person in the series from 1 to 9. Now, if you are a 2, um, you are gifted with the ability to make peace. Some of the world's most famous leaders are born under this number, like Gandhiji, for instance. Now, they pay a lot of attention to detail. Number twos, they pay a lot of attention to detail and they're very sensitive. They need so much love and kind encouragement to tap into their complete potential. But harsh words and a haphazard treatment of a child born under two series, the child will become the adversity itself. Now, they will use their talents to create upheavals very skillfully. Now, they have a vivid imagination, so they are likely to think and rethink and over imagine things until they create a shadow large enough to wage a war against people they think have hurt them. So, that's to be very sensitive around two child. The number three is the most creative, proud, fortunate, talented people with the gift of words. If you have been born on the 3rd, on the 12th, on the 21st, and 30th, you are a number three. Now, a number three, they can be full of themselves. They could be selfish and arrogant, but people will love them for what they are. They will never lack money in their life, and Number three, since it's the number of Jupiter, help and money will come to them whenever they need it. But a shadow three will never be able to tap into its full creative potential. In fact, their talent with words will go the wrong way. They will be highly misunderstood and live a stunted life with all their talents bubbling away in the shadow. So, to get a three to function according to its potential, you need to allow a three its pride and arrogance. So, now let's move on to number four. When you speak to a number four, have a sense of purpose. They do not have the time or the interest to think of words much. They are reason oriented. They are people of practicality and action. So you can write them a long love letter or a poem, and their response is likely to be, did you switch off the geyser or did you stock enough eggs? They are usually people of science and scientific reasoning. So a shadow four will be lazy or they may be procrastinators. They all that steady action and organizational skills will be focused on doing things that do not do them much good. They could be prone to inaction and self-deprecatory beliefs. So once a four is convinced that they are not good enough, it will take great efforts for them to reinvent themselves. Now, if you have children who are four bonds, like someone born on the 4th, on the 13th, on 22nd, and 31. They are a number four. Now, have a sense of purpose in your life so that your child can grow up seeing an example of focus and purpose. Now, let's go on to number five. Um, the number five bond is a person of constructive freedom, sexuality, restlessness, and so much opportunity. It is one of the most fortunate numbers in Chinese numerology. A child with a number five needs to be prepped up with great enthusiasm and words that indicate so much purpose and scope for great achievement. Now, if they are handled without care and purpose, all that constructive energy and freedom in their free spirit will be focused towards sexuality and restlessness. Unless they are channeled into something constructive, their power of focus will be fragmented and all over the place. They need to be inspired to believe that they can attain great things. Otherwise, they tend to overindulge and have fun without focusing on building a solid foundation for the future. Now, a number six, a person born on the 6th, 15th, and 24th, is capable of finding a lot of joy in domesticity. They're often dutiful children, concerned and very sensitive to their family's needs. They strive to balance their personal and professional work life, and they are very sweet to be around. But a shadow six will yearn for freedom from their domestic duties. They will be unconventional and very modern in their approach to life, sometimes affecting the conservative flow of ideology. They are beautiful and charming to behold. They enjoy a lot of attention from the opposite sex. Now, a shadow six is likely to be very materialistic and likely to do whatever it takes to maintain an image of success. They tend to attract too many unwanted relationships into their life and scatter their prospects. So sometimes a six could be duty bound. They often forget to live for themselves. The number seven, okay, I'm going to number seven. So, number seven, uh, it is quite opposite to a number six slightly. Now, if number six is duty bound, loves to be around family, and number seven is the mystic, the thinker, the researcher. It is a lover of solitude. So it is perhaps the most detached number in the series. A well balanced seven is a joy to be around. They make inspirational teachers. They are not clingy, they will love you exactly how you need to be loved. They are deep and interested in the occult. A shadow seven will always have trouble with intimacy and their love life. They could self sabotage all their prospects. So they are capable of deep analysis, and it would be good to tune them to be interested in many positive things. Otherwise, a shadow seven will grow to be embittered, angry, and wild person who influence people the wrong way. They become people with mean intelligence. The number eight is one, okay, that has a soul plan of facing challenges from every soul dimension known. So, right from the time they are children, they have challenges they go through, just like the symbol of eight. It is an infinity, symbol of infinity. So, similarly, They go through ups and downs, and it gives them so much power as they grow. It gives them so much power. They have a sound judgment, maturity, and are they have the ability to make sound decisions for themselves. A shadow eight, on the other hand, um, will be able to bring the world to a halt, because if they are not inspired to channel their energy with love and compassion, they can create an uproar. You do not want to be an eight to be your enemy. So they will know exactly how to hurt and break you. So a shadow eight can be very dominating and throw their positive traits in you. So eight is very powerful and strong. A lot of famous people in the world are an eight. So now let's go to number nine, and we'll end the session very shortly. The number nine is a warrior. It is the public influencer. People with nine have a voice that can change the world. A big fraction of famous people, again, influential leaders are strong nine. If they choose to love and accept you, they will do so no matter what, even if the world falls apart. Even if no one supports them and they believe in a cause, they will stick to it. Now, if they choose to hate or disdain, even God is powerless before they will. So, a shadow nine can propound hate. A nine child handled without care can be incorrigible and very stubborn. A shadow nine will have issues making decisions and can be puppets in the hands of the adults they respect, unable to have the guts to grow out of their parent's shadow. So there are people who are protectors of the world at large. So now these are general, but they are very effective ways to understand the effect of words and actions, and how they can create a deep shadow in a person. Now, I hope these words have helped you, and I hope you will move in the right direction and work on your shadow if you need to. I hope all of you wish and practice immense grace as you exercise your shadow, your emotions, and all your luck and love in life. Uh, uh, I wish you great joy in your life. Bless you all. I wish you exercise your power of words in the most intelligent way. Thank you.